Well, as the Ukrainian army suffers losses in battle, more men are being called up to serve. For now, only reservists must answer the call, but all men deemed eligible to serve are banned from leaving the country and could be drafted to the front lines. DW's Amien Essif sat down with young men in the western Ukrainian city of Lviv and asked them how this was affecting their lives.
I will have to grab a gun if I will have to fight for Ukraine, so I think I will stay and I will do what I need to do.
If I'm called up, I think I'm ready, even though I've never held a weapon in my life. But everything can be learned, step by step.
I'm following the ahimsa, as that is said, no harm to any living creature.
I didn't have some personal hate or desire to use violence, like right against people. But well, if there was no option, well then.
I'm interested in defending this land from intruders, and there's lots of other interesting ways of doing this.
Currently, I'm working as a hairdresser. It's my profession.
I'm a sport journalist, and I've just arrived from Beijing Olympics, like on 23rd of February, and like next morning, the war started.
I'm a TV presenter on our public broadcaster. We evacuated from Kyiv and we're continuing to work on the information front. It's a very important moment now. Someone may ask why we men aren't on the front lines, but I would say we're also on a front line right now.
I don't know what will happen like in 2 days, in 3 days here, but I suppose like every Ukrainian have to do their job.
What to do? It's a main question.
My wife and my daughter are in another country now, in Poland. I can probably only see them after the war, when they can return to Ukraine.
My mom and my girlfriend's parents, so they left to Netherlands.
It's hard. I didn't call my daughter for the first 3 weeks because it was very emotional and I couldn't hold back my tears. So I didn't call for 3 weeks. But since I started to calm down, we've been in touch.
Now just staying here, waiting for something, I don't know, actually waiting for a victory of Ukrainian army.
And DW's Amien Essif, who filed that report, joins me now in the studio. So, Amien, you traveled in Ukraine, you spoke to many young Ukrainian men. What's your impression of their feelings surrounding the topic of fighting for their country?
Well, Terry, there was as many opinions as there are men in Ukraine, I think. And I'll say that it was very difficult to do this report, to get people to talk to me because of how emotional this topic is and how taboo it is as well. A lot of people didn't want to talk on camera because they thought I was asking them to tell me that they were cowards, or to get out of them that they didn't want to fight, that they didn't want to join the Ukrainian army. But I said, look, come to my studio. I'm going to ask you how this law has affected your life, and you tell me whatever you want to. And in the end, I got to talk to several people. And the picture became clear that you have people who were disappointed because they signed up on the very first day of the war and were turned away because the Ukrainian military at that point was not taking anybody except people who had combat experience. And so they've been trying since then to fight. You have other people who are, like we saw in this report, who follow Buddhist practice of ahimsa and would never kill anything as small as a mosquito, but at the same time have stayed in Ukraine and because they want to help the country fight off the invaders. So in general, the opinion was that they wanted to help. The question is how they can help.
Now, you mentioned the law. We're talking about conscription law, a law that also keeps people from leaving the country, men. What exactly are the rules for young Ukrainians when it comes to either fighting or not fighting for their country?
So at the start of the war, Zelensky said no men between the ages of 18 and 60 could leave the country, and every man between the ages of 18 and 27, this was already in place before the war, had to and has to sign up to be conscripted. Now, at the moment, they are only on phase 3 of the conscription, which means that in the beginning, they took men who had military experience, who had combat experience already. Now they've moved as far as taking men who have had some kind of training, but they would still need to be trained a little bit further before they could be sent to the front lines. Phase 4 would be the general mobilization, which would mean anybody, any man between the ages of 18 and 60 could be sent to the front lines, but most Ukrainians believe that we're still far away from that. Now, the rule that affects most people is this rule that they can't leave the country, and that has actually split up a lot of families. There are a few exemptions to this rule. If you have a child with autism, for example, or disabilities, then you could leave the country to be with your family if they fled.
Okay. What about opposition to these rules? Did you see any of that?
It's very small, but there's evidence that it is happening, that border guards in Moldova have reported over 1,000 people having migrated illegally over the border there because there are no fences. People are paying smugglers up to $15,000 to get out. So it's small, but you can tell that there are some men who are trying to get out at all costs.
Amien, thank you very much for your reporting and your insights. DW's Amien Essif.